Hello and welcome to our brand new episode of Health with Sneha. I'm Sneha Mordani and we talk about all things health and of course the environment as well. We've just commemorated the World Hepatitis Day, and what really is hepatitis? How many of us know about hepatitis? Are we talking about the precautions to be taking? Are we talking about the kind of measures that we should be undertaking to ensure that we don't get this infection? What are the different types of hepatitis? What kind of food should you be consuming to keep this infection at bay? What are the precautions against it? To talk about that and much more, I have with me Dr. Shiv Kumar Sareen, is an hepatologist associated and pretty much set up the Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences here in the National Capital. Dr. Arvinder Singh Soin again is the chairman of Liver Transplant Surgery Department at Medanta Hospitals here in the National Capital Region in Gurugram. Thank you both for your time, and this is something that we need to talk about now because it is very little is known about hepatitis. In fact, there is a lot of misinformation about hepatitis. So I'm going to ask the first questions, very basic questions to Dr. Soin first. What exactly is hepatitis? And there are many kinds of hepatitis, Dr. Soin, but two forms of hepatitis are considered to be, in fact, the most dangerous. If you could tell us a little about what this infection is and which are the most dangerous kinds.
There are two types of hepatitis. Hepatitis is basically inflammation of the liver, and that, in simple terms, is a damage that happens to the liver when the liver is affected by either an infection or a toxic agent. And this can happen in two ways. One is acute hepatitis, where previously healthy liver gets affected by an infection or a toxic injury due to a drug or a chemical over a period of days and weeks. And then with or without treatment, this acute hepatitis generally gets better over a few weeks. And then after that, there are no aftermath or sequelae from acute hepatitis. Rare cases of acute hepatitis may develop into liver failure, needing expert liver care in an ICU, in a liver unit, or even liver transplant. But that's rare in acute hepatitis. The other type is chronic hepatitis, which means that these are injuries or this is a damage that happens over a long period of time. And that is primarily of four types in adults. One is alcohol-associated hepatitis, which means excessive consumption of alcohol will cause damage to the liver, initially just fatty chain, then later inflammation, and later even liver failure. Second is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or hepatitis that is associated with a person being obese or having bad lipids or bad cholesterol or having uncontrolled diabetes and mixed with or together with a poor lifestyle or a sedentary lifestyle. The third type is a viral infection, hepatitis B, and fourth type is also a viral infection, hepatitis C. So these are the chronic types of hepatitis that can affect an adult liver.
Okay, you mentioned hepatitis B, and also there is a vaccine. It is easily preventable, Dr. Sareen, using a vaccine. Just tell us a little more about the vaccine and to which age group is this vaccine usually given?
Well, hepatitis B vaccine has been available for almost 40 years or so. But you see, COVID vaccination, there is a drive for 100%, 99% vaccination. Hepatitis B vaccine, which is almost 99% effective, has been taken by almost just like 1/3 of the people in the country. So hepatitis B vaccine is protective in a manner if it is given to a newborn baby at birth, then at 1 month, 6 months, for 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and 14 weeks, 4 dosages, 0, 6, 10, and 14. The baby is almost protected for life. And for all of us adults who have never been exposed to hepatitis B, taking at day 0, then 1 month, and then 6 months, 3 dosages are good enough. The vaccine is protective in the sense it makes good antibodies, and these antibodies can prevent us from getting hepatitis B infection. Unfortunately, as I said, only 1/3 of the people have taken vaccine. Even healthcare workers, only 2/3 have taken vaccines. 1/3 never think it is serious. It's a good vaccine. It's a vaccine preventable disease. There is no vaccine for hepatitis C, so we have to have universal precautions. And also, we should see that those who have Hep C are treated with drugs so that the virus can be eliminated.
You know, Dr. Soin, Dr. Sareen just spoke to us about the vaccine and that it's been around for 4 decades. Yeah, but there are many myths associated with hepatitis, and do help us bust some of these myths. One of the myths is that it can't be treated, and this isn't true. So this isn't true for all kinds of hepatitis. Am I right?
Absolutely correct. Most of the types of hepatitis are preventable and treatable.
Hepatitis B leads to death, and that is the only way out, is what is being said. That too is a myth. Dr. Soin.
So hepatitis B, if it is untreated and if it goes on unchecked, then yes, it can lead to chronic liver disease, occasionally liver cancer, occasionally liver failure. Even at that stage, they can be saved with a liver transplant. But then, of course, if liver transplant is not done in time, or the patient is not suitable for it because of the advanced nature of the disease, then yes, it can result in death. But I think it is incorrect to say that in general, hepatitis B causes death. No more.
Okay. Now, because you spoke about the vaccine, Dr. Sareen, I'm asking you, question being asked by many is that the vaccine is extremely expensive and it's going to lead to side effects. It's not affordable for many. Is that correct, Dr. Sareen?
It's not correct. Hepatitis B vaccine is amongst the cheapest. In fact, it is less than the cost of having a simple dinner outside, not even in a 5-star. All 3 dosages can be given. There are just hardly any side effects, and it is very safe. But let me add to 1 or 2 things which you asked, Dr. Soin. How many people, let's say India has about 30 million with hepatitis B and about 70 lakhs with hepatitis C. It is important to know that only 10% of the people know that they are infected. Only 1 in 10 knows, others do not know. And of the 10% of the total pool, only 4% are taking treatment. Isn't that a worrisome thing?
Okay.
That there is an infection. For COVID, everybody would go out. Everybody would get tested. Home test kits were delivered and free testing was done for hepatitis B, which is a major killer. In fact, it kills more people in 1 day than HIV kills in 1 year. It is 100 times more infective, hepatitis B. So with that kind, in every 30 seconds a person dies with hepatitis B in the world. With all that data and the very good vaccine, we are still not giving vaccine or testing those who are infected. And 10% to 20% of the people who have hepatitis B once in life will get chronic liver disease, and 1% would die from liver disease. So with that kind, I think there is no question for asking the vaccine लगानी है या नहीं लगानी. वैक्सीन लगवानी है, 100% लगानी है, हर बच्चे को लगानी है. There is no question on that.
Very important point that you make, but I think another key question is that how many people know what are the symptoms for them to be able to understand that there indeed is something wrong. Which are the symptoms to watch out for, Dr. Soin? Important for early detection, early treatment, and all of that will of course go a long way in saving lives.
So for all kinds of liver disease, especially hepatitis, the symptoms are very similar. And in the early stages of hepatitis, they may even be very non-specific. That means the same symptoms can happen in other diseases and other problems.
Okay.
So initially, if somebody has acute hepatitis with hepatitis C or A, that's the kind of hepatitis one gets from infected food or water. Then one can have nausea, lack of appetite, even vomiting, some fever. So that's initial symptoms. And then that usually subsides in a week. And then you do, if you go to a physician, then a physician does liver function tests and you find LFTs or liver function tests are elevated. And then that subsides over 2-3 weeks. So that's the way acute hepatitis works.
Okay.
For chronic hepatitis, again, the initial symptoms are tiredness, weakness, anemia, lack of appetite. And when it gets more advanced, then you get jaundice. Jaundice is simply yellowness of eyes and presence of a serum bilirubin of more than 2 or 2.5. Jaundice is not a disease, it's just a symptom of liver disease. So then one gets jaundice. And if it progresses further, then one can get collection of water in the tummy or in the legs, swelling of the legs. And in more advanced chronic liver diseases, and one can get bleeding in the vomit or bleeding in the motion. Then you can also get drowsiness, sleepiness, confusion. That's like a pre-coma state. So these are all advanced liver disease symptoms. So early on is just non-specific symptoms, and the person should see a physician and they should have a liver function test, and that's how it will be detected.
You know, the other myth surrounding it that Dr. Sareen, that hepatitis B is something that spreads like a regular cold. If you touch a person, then you might get infected. It can also spread by coughing and sharing utensils. That's a myth. Talk to us a little about that as well.
Yeah, there are several myths about hepatitis B. First is it is a blood-borne virus. So it can spread only from man to man, or man to woman, or woman to man, only through blood or body fluids. Say, for example, infected blood from one person is given to the other, then, or from mother to the baby, which is today the commonest cause of transmission of hepatitis B, mother-baby transmission. It can also go from body fluids, a surgeon or a healthcare worker can get infected with that. But it is totally, a myth that by touching clothes or by coughing, it will spread. This is not a airborne virus. It is a blood-borne virus. Yes, it is also true that sometimes a person who is very infected by kissing can give this virus if the other person has a lesion in the mouth. The saliva also carries the virus. It's just tenfold less than in the blood. Also, all body fluids can carry. For example, you don't dispose of an infected person's body fluids properly. So healthcare workers can get it. But it does not spread by touching or by clothes or by hankies or by eating together. No way.
Dr. Soin, what are the best ways to protect your liver from hepatitis? I know that question will have several answers, but if you could just list out a couple of points about what one should be doing, at least to be aware of this infection and how to protect oneself. What can we do within our own domain?
So I'll just list out the ways to prevent hepatitis. Let's make it simple. The first is to prevent acute hepatitis E or A with having clean water and clean fresh food. The second is to prevent hepatitis B by universal hepatitis B vaccination, just like Dr. Sareen said a little while ago. To prevent hepatitis C, you have to basically take the same precautions as preventing AIDS. So AIDS, hepatitis C and B all spread through bodily fluids and blood. That also Dr. Sareen just said. So hepatitis C prevention involves use of disposable syringes and needles in hospitals, for the blood bank to have proper testing of blood donors, for dialysis machines to be cleaned properly so that hepatitis C doesn't spread between patients. And it can also spread through sexual contact. So that should be prevented. Now let's talk about hepatitis because of toxic products. So, if somebody is having Ayurvedic medicines or anabolic steroids or even anti-tubercular medicines without supervision and monitoring, they can actually get liver damage. And then alcoholic hepatitis can be prevented by having controlled amounts of alcohol, if at all. And finally, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or fatty liver hepatitis can be prevented by controlling diabetes, weight, and lipids.
Dr. Sareen, even as we speak, the World Health Organization, and we've been talking about this for a while now, they flagged it off. This outbreak of hepatitis amongst children that we're seeing outside of India, of course. What could be the possible reasons behind it, and is this something that can be expected in India as well? What's happening?
Well, the unexplained hepatitis in children was because some time ago the immunity had gone down, and it was suspected that something like an adenovirus, which was part of several vaccinations, and since the vaccines were not given, so the children were exposed now to what is routinely a spread prevalent adenovirus, and this was causing an unusual kind of hepatitis in children. There was a scare at a time, but right now I don't think that scare is there. I think the bigger scare in children certainly is if they have hepatitis B, which they have got from their mother. So I'm just to flag this important point through you, that a baby gets the virus from the mother, then 90% the virus will stay throughout the life of the child. He's 10-year-old, 20-year-old, he goes for a job, he will be hepatitis B positive. For us, hepatitis day is one day in a year, 28th July. But for this child or young person, every day is a hepatitis day. He gets up like a patient with hepatitis B for no mistake of his. And he gets it from his mother. So you can't choose your mother. You will get born into a family. So all his life he has a stigma of hepatitis B. He doesn't get a job, he doesn't get passports, he doesn't get the same status as any one of us gets, but for no mistake of his. So this is a social stigma of hepatitis B. And because of this, people don't come out, they don't get tested, they don't get treated. And I therefore urge all of us that it is a whole of society approach to eliminate hepatitis B. And for that, not only we have to give them sympathy, but empathy. You must empower them, help these subjects who are living with hepatitis B. We see it every day. They don't get a medical job. They will ask to, no, you can't take city. You can't be an assistant to Dr. Soin. But because you're hepatitis, maybe he can take it, but you can't take a surgical job. You change it to a non-clinical job. A nurse will not get a job. So what I want to impress upon to rest of the people who are listening, please give them respect, accept them with open arms. It's not their mistake that they got hepatitis B. Sometimes even hepatitis C, which comes through blood. So we should respect, accept these people, treat them, and of course, eliminate the virus.
Very well said, Dr. Sareen. My final question is to Dr. Soin now. Dr. Soin, when you spoke to me about hepatitis A, you did tell me that there is this phenomenon of unexplained hepatitis in children that we're seeing in the post-COVID world, really. What is it that you're seeing when patients come to you, and what is the pattern that you have sort of established about COVID in children after the pandemic?
So in our pediatric liver division, we have treated 8 children who've had completely unexplained hepatitis, and 5 of them gave a history of having had COVID infection about 6 to 8 weeks previously. And this has been the experience of many of the large liver institutes across the world and in India. And there have been publications and scientific papers on this. It is thought, like Dr. Sareen said, that somehow the children's immunity is affected and is lowered, and either the immune reaction to a previous coronavirus infection or activation of other viruses such as adenovirus, which normally don't cause much of a problem in children. They just cause a mild gastrointestinal illness. But in children who've had lowering of their immunity by COVID infection, this immune phenomenon may attack the liver and cause damage to the liver, which we call hepatitis. But the good thing is that majority of these children will or have recovered. Although occasionally one has seen these go into liver failure. We only had 1 out of these 8 that went into liver failure, but he also fortunately recovered in 3 weeks. But in the West, occasionally these children have had to have liver transplant for liver failure. So this is a new phenomenon seen in the last 6 to 8 months in the pandemic or just post-pandemic.
All right. Dr. Soin, Dr. Sareen, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your views with us on the important topic of discussion, hepatitis. The message from our doctors is very, very clear that hepatitis is not only preventable, it is also treatable. It's just important to bring hepatitis care to everyone. Accessible hepatitis care is what we really need. Thank you so much, Dr. Soin, Dr. Sareen, for your views.